I think we are live. I guess go ahead and get started. I'm going to start up Instagram here, guys. I got a new setup here, so I think we are live on Instagram. I think we're good. All right, I got a new. I do apologize for that. It's starting out with the train horn because we are ready because it's Ignite Thursday. I hope you guys are doing fantastic today. The whole premise of Ignite Thursday, again, sorry for the horn, but we are excited. We're ready to rock and roll. And with that being said, why we started Ignite Thursday. The biggest thing I started to do this in doing Ignite Thursday was because I wanted to continue the underdog experiment. And for those people who don't know what the underdog experiment is, I essentially started an experiment about a month ago, right? I was trying to aim for 4 pillars that I have found have really helped my life, right? I focused on these particular pillars, all 4 pillars being one being time management, the other being health, finance, and soft skills, right? And so essentially that is what I was aiming to do. And so for those 4 weeks, I kind of went into everything and I deep dive into stuff, give some perspectives. And what has really helped me, right? Like I started on Monday with my goals for the week, and then I essentially try to execute on those goals throughout the week. And on Friday, I had a recap. And so I went over everything, essentially what I learned. And in that experiment, going through that whole experiment, right, I really found that, sorry, just double check and make everything shares good here. I really found that the biggest problem I had come across was that I didn't really start people from where to start, right? Like you need to know, like, how do you start? How do you get to this point to where you're actually executing on the stuff, right? Because a lot of the biggest things is we have problems with execution. We have problems with committing and wanting to actually do these things. So ultimately what I ended up doing, I started the underdog experiment. I went 4 weeks, right? That's on my YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out the underdog experiment, I realized, again, I got to focus on mindset and determine like how someone can transition, right? Because ultimately I've seen a lot of people struggle throughout my life, seen a lot of people just in general, right? I have a lot of friends that may be struggling with other things in their life. And so what I wanted to do was provide them guidance, right? Or just anybody in general out there that is struggling and gone through some of the same difficulties I have, right? Because some places, sometimes in your life, they can be really dark, right? And so you feel like you have nobody. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? Even when you do have somebody, it does tend to be hard, right? Like those people can't always be there. And you find that it is not easy to take along some of the stuff. So that's why I kind of started the underdog experiment. I started working, and again, I started finding a bunch of other different things that, again, I had to start from a better place, right? I couldn't just starting from the 4 pillars. I had to allow people, get them to the point where they could start executing on the 4 pillars, and that was what was important. So that's essentially where the underdog experiment came from. And then I wanted to continue doing lives. So I've been doing lives. I started last week with emotional ignition. That's essentially on execution, right? And so that's why I did the emotional ignition. Essentially is for the execution part of it, because it can be hard, right, on executing things. If you do want to catch that, again, that's on the YouTube channel. As far as this week, I did touch on perspective last week. And this is really what's going to change you and make you want to change, right? And so this week we're focusing on the shift, right? What is going to actually help you execute on these things, right? Want to make a change in your life. And it is a choice, right? Ultimately, you have to choose. Nobody can come in on here and tell you and motivate you. You can be all kinds of motivated, and then you may execute on it one day without any planning, and then you find out that it doesn't last more than a couple of days. So I wanted to deep dive in this whole thing. And so I started the Ignite Thursdays to essentially do that, because I'm also carrying a book along the same way as I'm writing these chapters. I am going through these and allowing myself to come on here and talk about some of the things that I'm going over, right, is ultimately what I'm trying to do. And so that's how essentially it all got started, right? All in a nutshell, that was 5 minutes. That wasn't too bad. I think Instagram is still rolling. I'm not quite sure. It's been a while since I've been on Instagram Live. But nonetheless, again, if you guys are on YouTube or on Facebook, like, subscribe, follow if you're on Instagram. But nonetheless, we're trying to make a change, and that's ultimately what I'm doing here. And that's why I am starting to do a coaching business as well. So if you guys are interested in that, you can also DM me on Instagram, or you can send the email to Discover Ignite request, and we can go over that. There will be limited slots for that, and I can do some one-on-one and try to help you guys with some of the pillars, right, that I go over on my YouTube channel, and help you guys with this. So to get started, the shift, right? How do you get to the points where you want to change your life? And last week I talked about this a little bit. You know, looking at my notes here, I got some talking points. You know, we chase the wrong thing, right? We look for the quick fix, and that is always a thing. And that's always the thing you typically see people are typically trying to sell you, right, as a quick fix. And there is no quick fix. That's one thing I've always found, is you have to go to the root of the problem, right? We look for the temporary quick fix, quick tips. These tips, a lot of the tips, they do help, but you ultimately have to dig down deep to fix the root of the issue. And for myself, I've been kind of, when I started this underdog experiment, right, like on YouTube, I started posting videos to help people, but the ultimate thing was that you're not getting the root of the problem, right? Like there are some things that can help, but to get deep down, you got to really understand how the brain works, the psychology of yourself, right? Just the human nature. And so to go deep down, you have to confront that, right? And that's what I'm, again, doing with these Ignite Thursdays on, again, last week was execution. This week is perspective. So we've got to get a new perspective. And in doing that, you have to look at your beliefs, right? I talked about this last week as well, but your belief system essentially, right, it's all conditioned into you ultimately, right? Your belief system is what's going to force you into choices, right? Sometimes those choices aren't the choices that you want. You have to realize that sometimes they don't serve you anymore. And when going through this and trying to understand how to get a perspective shift, you have to come at anything with an open mind, right? And the biggest thing is that, like, those people that watch me on here, or maybe it's the first time you are seeing me here, the biggest thing is that you have a filter, right? You essentially fact check when you see a human being, but if it's on TV, or if it is essentially put into an illustration, right, or a cartoon or something like that, you will find that your filter comes off, and that stuff just automatically gets absorbed by your subconscious, right? And then the active side of your brain, you're trying to essentially fact check everything that comes out of somebody's mouth. And if you do this, you realize that you're not allowing perspective to come into your life. And again, for me, I've had a lot of different perspective shifts. And so when, trying to reverse engineer this, you're trying to find that thing that will ignite you to make a change, right? Because ultimately, if you're not willing to make the change, you're not going to change at all, right? And so you have to look at your beliefs. You have to look at those things, tags or labels, right? When you are asking someone, well, what do you do, right? You're trying to essentially get a very basic understanding of what that person does for a living, right? So you could say, hey, well, I'm a programmer, or hey, I'm, nurse or cop, or whatever the case is, right? And so when you get that tag or that label, the first thing you do is you end up, you kind of like paint this picture already of who that person is, right? And so you have to remove these beliefs. You have to remove the tags and the labels, and come at it with a clean slate, right? You got to come at it in attention, right? Like someone's about ready to tell you the secrets of the world. So you got to focus, right? And you have to understand that you are in this to learn something completely new. right? And that's the best way to approach it. And when in doing so, you have to realize that your mind is you have this frequency bias, right? And I did talk about this last week as well too. Is that your brain loves to find patterns in things, and if you are living a specific way, right, it's used to that pattern, and you have to break that pattern, find new patterns to essentially reprogram your brain, right, and to see those other opportunities that are there. Because for me, it was a big awakening when I went plant-based, right? Like I realized that, for so long I had this other pattern ingrained, and I always thought these other different things, right? And then when I had that perspective shift, I realized that, man, this isn't as bad as people make it out to be, right? Now, there's a difference between vegan and plant-based, right? So you have to understand the difference there. But nonetheless, I mean, I had a perspective shift in what it actually did, right? Because we are all conditioned to believe a certain way. And sometimes you got to go against the grain to really see the perspective shift on different things. And so my perspective shifted on veganism, right? And on plant-based diets and what it actually does for the body. Right. You've heard about, lack of protein and all these other different things. Again, not talking about changing your diet to a plant-based diet. It's worked for me, and just talking about the perspective shift it had on my life and the dramatic changes it had on my life. Right. I was living in pain, essentially, right? Joints and everything else. And then I switched over, and I thought I was going to live that way forever, right? You think you're going to live a way forever for your life. And this is where it comes to those tags and those beliefs. You think you're going to live forever that way. You don't realize that things always change. Things are always temporary, right? And so with that being said, you are trying to again, change that frequency bias. And again, the frequency bias is, say you want to buy a car. You have you've never seen this car around town or nothing, right? And there's this specific car you want. You end up buying that car, and then all of a sudden you start noticing the same car on the road, and you're like, well, why is that, right? Like this whole time I didn't notice it. And so this is the frequency bias, right? Is your brain is determining the most recent things, right? It's looking for that pattern. And so a lot of times we come from negative environments. And so you want to try to change that by introducing new things. And that's why I started the underdog experiment, was to introduce, more positivity, more insight, a different mindset perspective to change your thought process, to realize that I got to look for a different pattern here. And then when you get on that frequency, essentially, of that pattern, you start to realize that you start seeing opportunity that was never there. It changes your eyes, right? And it changes you to put things into reality, right? And determine, well, hey, look, things are different. Things aren't the way I thought they were. And that's the perspective shift, right? That's what I'm talking about today, is that you have to have that shift to want to make the change. And it takes a realization, right? It could be a child that comes into your life, right? You have new responsibilities. So that's something you have to remember is this perspective shift, right? So it could be that, it could be a divorce, it could be a health issue, right? It puts things in perspective to know that you have to make a change. And in coming down with this and writing stuff down for this particular live, I was trying to determine, well, how can you make that perspective shift, right? If life is going to throw some perspective at you, that's a given, right? But the biggest thing to understand here is that, sorry, just double checking, making sure everything is okay on the speaker side and everything. Life will throw you curves, right? It'll give you perspective of its own. And a lot of times, we wonder why things don't change. It's because we don't have that shift. We don't see the new pattern that's in front of us. And that in itself can be hard, right? And so if you're not out there seeking experiences, if you're not out there reading books or watching documentaries, trying to find some new perspective, actively seeking perspective, you're never going to find it, right? You're going to be stuck in those beliefs and those tags, and it will be hard to get out, especially if you're not the kind of person that doesn't want to change up their routine, right? And that's a big thing about when you seek new perspective, right? Change up your routine. If you go to one way for work, change your direction every single day, make it different, right? Change the pattern up, right? I do believe in routine to specific things, but you can change different ways, right? Different ways. Maybe you go to the gym. Maybe you go for a walk every day, right? Take a walk down somewhere else. Maybe you read a specific book all the time. Read different books, right? Read some self-help book. Maybe something that you've been curious about, right? And it's about finding those things that have always drawn your curiosity and following up with them. If you follow up with them, you'll realize that there's other things out there, right? And you start seeing the other perspective. The thing is seeing it and following up and essentially field testing the stuff, right? If you can field test it, then you realize that a lot of these things aren't what they seem, right? And this is the best way to try to introduce new perspective. Again, it was for me, right? Like the plant-based diet. Like I always go back to this because this is one of the biggest shifts I had, and I was conditioned to believe a different way. And we are all conditioned through society to believe in specific things. And so you have to challenge that and not be fearful. And that can be one of the hardest things, is going against the herd, right? We want to always be part of a group. So to branch off from that is hard. And I get that. It takes time, it takes practice. All these different things take time and they take practice. Perspective is one of those. And it's not one of those things like where you just start overnight. It's just going to change it, right? You got to gradually make the change. And it's like anything in life, right? You have to gradually make that change, because if you try to do it overnight, you realize that a lot of these different things, they don't stick, right? You're trying to make a lifestyle change. You have to realize that you're going to slowly integrate it into your life. You have to realize that you're going to just try to break it down, right? And I did talk about this last week in the emotional ignition, is you have that big goal. And a lot of times when you look at a big goal, you look at the gap, right? From where you're at to that goal. You think that it's going to be forever, right? Because I also talked about this last week too, is, there's the destination, the duration, and then I forget what the third one is, right? But there's started with P, can't recall it, but right, you essentially want to just worry about the destination. You don't care about the duration, how long it gets there. You just want to get there. And so a lot of times we get caught up on instant results, right? That's what we want. We want instantaneous results. And so what does that cause us to do? It causes us to go on crash diets. It causes us to do all these other different things in our life that aren't really improving our lives, right? We're not going to the root of the problem. We get temporary satisfaction and we're okay with that. And then we find out that we come right back to the place, where you're like, man, I suck, and all these other different things, right? You're just beating yourself down for absolutely no reason. And to understand that what you want to do is to focus on those things that you can have control over, right? And that is just your daily objective, right? You have that grand goal. You want to break it down into a daily objective. Quit worrying about how long it's going to take you there. Quit worrying about the path, right? P, the path. That was the other one I was missing. And how you're going to get there. You just know, I'm going to get there, because you have to realize that everybody, again, is unique. So every path is going to be unique to get there. And a lot of information, that's another big thing too, is that there's a lot of information out there that is very general, and it has to be general because we learn off the experiences that we go through. And so you have to find the unique way that's going to get you there, right? You can throw out basic plans. They do help. These tools, they do help, right? They get you to where you want to go. You have to tweak them to which way is going to help you best. But with that said, you have to getting the perspective, right? It's going out there. Again, you got to come at it with the fact that you don't know anything, right? And you want to, it's almost like the emotional ignition I talked about last week in in execution, right? You want to try to eliminate thought, because when you start allowing thought to come in, that inner voice, and a lot of us that are introverts, right? We live in our head. And so that voice is, I think, even 10 times louder than most people's, right? And so we listen to that voice, and that voice is telling us, our beliefs and these things, these labels that we have on ourselves, and that we can't break out of that. And so when you're looking at perspective, you have to remove the beliefs, remove the tags, come at it open, right? Someone's going to tell you world secrets here, right? What can I learn? What can I learn from this? How can I apply this, right? Is what you're trying to look for. You're trying to look for a new perspective to apply it to your life. And when you realize that you do this, right, you're going to have to slowly make that change every day. Now you get new perspective, you're ready to commit to that. You have to realize that it just takes that 4% of your day to be able to do that. And winning that daily objective. If you can do that every day, days turned into weeks, months, and then years. You realize that you're slowly transitioning yourself, right? There's nothing that's going to be magic and get you out of that spot. And that's what I'm trying to help you, is to find that perspective that's going to shift your mindset into seeing the pattern, right? And believing in the pattern. And this is, again, something I talked about in the underdog experiment, is that unseen progress, right? A lot of times you have unseen progress, and that's why I say you need to document it. I had someone on the stream last week ask about, can I record my voice and then, play back, whatever works for you, right? You can jot it down. You can do a video, whatever the case is. You want to have that feedback loop, and you want to be doing this every day, right? Feedback is extremely important, because you think, if you take it from an aspect of a business, right? If you didn't have a feedback loop until about 6 months in, or a year in, to have that feedback loop, which we all play this game, right? Because it's coming up on the new year. Everybody has New Year's resolutions, and they look back, as opposed to, you need to shorten that feedback loop, right? Go day to day. You want to break everything down in your daily habits, right? Like, what are you doing during the day? What is that objective? And then replay your day, right? Just before you go to bed, replay your day. And did I meet that daily objective? What could I have done better? Right? And just, you want to slowly increment it, right? You want to start compounding your efforts to get to your grand goal. Yes, you can achieve these things, right? Like, I've changed myself dramatically from where I was, right? Like, I was an overweight kid who was shy and everything else, right? And I transformed myself throughout the years. But, I've had some of the biggest changes in my life over the past couple years, and doing lives and doing all these other things that 5 years ago, there's no way I would have done this stuff, right? I was a very private person. I didn't want people to know about my life. And then I had a perspective shift, right? I had some things happen in my life. My father passed, and it really opened my eyes on time, right? And we get these reality checks on specific things when you get a perspective shift, right? And my biggest thing was time, right? Is to realize that your time isn't in abundance. That if you want to enjoy your life, right, you have to realize that if you want things in life, you have to go after them. It takes baby steps to build up, right? Like, it took me baby steps to build up to a lot of different things. And even like going back to the plant-based diet, right? Like, I didn't just do that overnight. I slowly made that transition, right? I took out meat. That was easier for me because I used to be on a bodybuilding diet, right? I used to eat chicken, broccoli, and rice. That was like all I ate. And so I was like sick of chicken. And so it was okay for me because I was just tired of eating that way. And from that point on, right, then I slowly tried to, take out different processed stuff, right, that had milk in it, right? That was the next objective. And it took me, again, like 2 months to slowly transition. And all these things, you have to realize that you just have to go 4% outside of your comfort zone. If you can do that every day, and whatever your objective is, whatever your goal is, right, your goal doesn't have to be huge, right? You're probably just trying to build up smaller things, right? Maybe you're trying to build up your confidence. And to be able to do that, you need to take those small steps first. and realize what's going to get you there. And to get your, if you feel like you're in a weak spot, it's just realizing the best way to take your power back is by making a decision to do something that will essentially be in your favor, right? And I talked about last week about being selfish. And that's important, to be selfish, to make sure that you execute the daily objective. That's where you have to be selfish. And you take your power back by executing that every day. And when you realize that I can get my power back through action, through execution, right? Through that daily objective. And when you realize that you start doing this and pushing yourself, that you get to a point to where you are where you want to be, right? You start becoming the person you want to be. You need to visualize who you want to be, so you know where your navigation is going, right? You don't want to just guess, and you want to see what your ideal self is. You want to have that destination. You have that destination, then you take the steps to get there. And this is broken down by your daily tasks, right? Your daily objectives. And you realize that you can get there, that it is not out of reach. It is possible, right? Like, again, me, right? The chubby little kid growing up, right? Like, used to get in fights all day over school just because of my weight and everything else, right? Like, you have to realize that you can get there. Again, you have to remove the tags. You have to remove these beliefs, these conditions, right? You've been conditioned away. This is one perspective you need to understand. You're conditioned to believe a certain way. Your objective is to be the person that finds their purpose, right? And that's also one of the biggest things to talk about here, is finding purpose. What is purpose, right? If you follow me on Instagram, I did a video on purpose. And the reasoning for that being is because purpose is really hard to explain, right? Purpose is, the way I see it, is that thing you lose track of time and track of self, right? That is your purpose. The longer you stay in that purpose, you get rid of anxiety, because, you lose sense of self. You lose your sense of, if you're in depression, all these other different things that would typically take you down, and you feel like you don't have the confidence or the strength to carry on, right? That's ultimately what you're trying to do, is break out of that and realize you need to be the flow seeker, right? You want to seek flow, finding flow, right? That's what your objective is if you find, you can't find that perspective, start looking for those things, right? That's another thing that can help you, is by finding flow, finding those things that get you out of who you are, make you lose track of time. And that will get you on your path, right, to where you want to be. And because ultimately we can lose ourselves, right? Like, when I came out of divorce, I lost myself. I didn't know who I was. I was way out of flow. I didn't know where I wanted to start. So I went out and I sought perspective. I started reading books, reading documentaries, right? I didn't spend time binge watching and all that stuff. That's another big thing, is auditing your time. Where is your time going? Are you spending a lot of time on social media? Finding those things that give perspective, to allow you to think for yourself, right? All these things kind of tie together. We live in a society essentially that you're being conditioned, right? You're being conditioned through social media. You have to realize you have to disconnect, use your thought process, right? You got to think for yourself, right? If you start thinking for yourself, you start looking at perspective, you start looking for that pattern, you realize that it's there. All these opportunities that you didn't see are right in front of you. Then you start realizing, man, you know what other perspectives are out there that I can actually see, right? And so you continue on doing these different things and seeking new perspective, right? Being that flow seeker. And you start looking for different things that you lose track of time of, and being self-aware, like, man, what time is it? That is where you want to be. That's where you want to find. You realize that by living in the state that, you're much more happier. You have your sense of purpose, right? You are living the life that you want. right? By staying in the zone. There are many ways to do it. And I've been actually reading about essentially trying to find flow lately. And that is something that I've been trying to put in the book, right? Is finding perspective by looking for flow, seeking for flow. You can find flow, then lose a sense of time and self. Then you can, get to where you want to go, right? All these other things, again, that I'm essentially talking about, right? We get caught up and we want to have relationships. We want to have the money, right? Like if you can find those things that you lose your sense of self, those other things will come, right? You need a sense of purpose. That's what your primary focus should be on. Then the relationships and everything else come into your life, and you realize that, hey, okay, well, I didn't have to, seek, right? You're seeking to fill the purpose through other things, through other means, right? Maybe that may even be material things, right? Maybe you're looking to buy a car, right? You're trying to fill that void. So perspective shift. That's what we got today. That's what I want to talk is about finding purpose, finding in ways to essentially find that purpose, right? To find that perspective and shift, and how you can shift your perspective in understanding that you have to make that choice. No one else can make it for you, right? You cannot seek it. You'll always be looking for a temporary solution until you realize that the solution is going to the root of the problem and changing it there by changing your mindset, by looking for perspective, by looking for purpose, by realizing that you have to break those goals, that ideal self down. You have to do a little bit of pre-planning, break it down, and then execution. What's my daily task? Being selfish, executing on that, right? And then you will get to where you want to be. There's no easy road. I wish there was, right? There's no pill you can pop. None of that stuff exists. You have to put in the work. But you realize that it's not as big as you think it is. It's not as hard as you think it is. To realize that it only takes decisions, daily decisions, to get there, right? You just have to put your head down. Well, first you have to look up and see where you're going, right? You got to know where your navigation is going, and then put your head down and just start working, just start daily objectives, right? It's not as complicated if you can break it down to your daily objective. So that is it for today. I want to talk about some upcoming stuff I got going on. I will be going live again next Thursday. I know there's a lot of people. It's Thanksgiving, so I know a lot of people will probably not be on here, but nonetheless, I wanted to go live because I'm a veteran, and I know there's a lot of people out there who may be, seeking just to get out, and I might actually just go on Instagram live. I don't know, something I'm debating, but I want to go live and be there for other people and help them out, help them improve their lives. And by doing that, right, maybe getting some new perspective, talking about some things. So I think next Thursday might be about gratitude, right? It might just be about some story time next Thursday or something, right? Just to help other people out there, be there for other people. So next Thursday, again, I'm doing these every Thursday, again, to build my book. That's what I'm doing. So I've been writing every night. I've been updating Instagram with my word count. So you can look for me there, follow me on Instagram and update and see where I'm updating my word count in there. Facebook, I am getting my Facebook set up. So if you guys are watching me through Facebook, that is still getting built out. Instagram, what I'm looking to do with Instagram is go on there more often on Instagram and helping people out, right? So I'll start going more live on Instagram to help you out, right? If you have a question, come on and try to help you out the best that I can, right? With the experience and stuff that I have. I've been through a lot of different things, a lot of different perspective shifts. My YouTube channel shows a lot of that stuff. So if you're curious about my background, go to my YouTube channel. I have a lot of stuff, a lot of information of the things that I've been through in life. I've been through military. I've shifted my life many different times. I've flopped careers. I've been through some really big life changes, health scares, divorces, people telling me I couldn't do it, all that stuff. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you guys, here to improve your life, change the mindset, but it all begins with the mindset, right? Is getting that perspective and then working on the execution. So you've got to commit to be able to do that, get that perspective, and you realize that your opportunities are there. Don't ever think you're in a place that you can't get out of, right? You're accepting the current place that you're at. To be able to change it is you cannot accept it anymore. You have to take the forefront of executing that daily task to be able to get there. So guys, I appreciate you guys being here. I hope you guys are doing fantastic tonight. And then I will have another video out on YouTube here pretty soon to look for this weekend. And I am doing an interview. That's another thing I got going on, doing an interview. So look for that video to come out next week. It's essentially about following your heart with Lily Ma. She's one of my old coaches that I used to have. And her story is incredible, right? And so I'm bringing her on the channel to share her story with you guys. So again, look for that on YouTube. And with that being said, guys, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate all the support, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You guys are fantastic. Until next time, I will see you guys later.